Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Hangar Talk podcast. This week, we sit down with Urschel pilot, helicopter pilot, and warbird pilot Scott Urschel to discuss all things aviation related, including performing at air shows in his BO-105 helicopter, including how he runs a business selling helicopters to people, and much, much more. So, we hope you guys enjoy this week's episode of Hangar Talk, and we'll talk to you on the backhand. Hello, Scott, and welcome to Hangar Talk.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, sir?
Good.
So, everybody, this is Scott Urschel. He is a pilot and for Pylon Aviation. He also flies the BO-105 and a couple of other warbirds. Very impressive. I can't wait to see him at Huntington Beach this year. So, Scott, let's start with you, sir. How did you get into aviation?
You know, my father, after the war, learned how to fly in Phoenix after the Second World War. And when I was a young boy, he, took me up in a small airplane. And he never really promoted aviation much with me other than, gave me my first ride. And then when I turned 18, I had met a guy that was the rep for Hughes Helicopters. And he took me for a ride in a Hughes 500 helicopter and encouraged me to get my license. So I had made some money doing some real estate deals, and I learned to fly in a Robinson R-22, bought one, got my CFI, started to do instruction to build experience and time. And when I had this business that was fairly successful, I bought a Hughes 500 and worked it to justify to my wife that I needed a helicopter. And it kind of morphed into a little bit of a business. I was building, I had a small aerospace machine shop, and I built parts for a company called Dillon Precision, and they built rifle and pistol reloading equipment. And the owner had a minigun that he was rebuilding, and we put it on a helicopter. And next thing I knew, I was doing flight testing for this machine gun off the helicopter, developing experience, and just kind of morphed into where I'm at right now. Now I'm the distributor for Airbus helicopters for the US and Canada is my business. So the A-Star behind me is one of our primary products we sell. I sell a wide variety of A-Star to our medium twin, which is the H-160. And then I fly a variety of the other helicopters, all the Bell product up to the 412, and a variety of other helicopters.
That's awesome. And how often are you working? Like, is there a specific work day that is more busy than the other days, or?
Yeah, it can be. I broker as well. So I broker a variety of helicopters, fixed wing aircraft, warbirds. I've sold everything from a Super Corsair P-51, a variety of the warbirds, jets. Last Thursday, I flew to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, picked up a H-145, flew to Missoula, Montana to close. That next day, I closed on an H-130 in Colorado. So, it just really it varies pretty radically. And I train and instruct in all the helicopters I sell and airplanes. I'm a fixed wing multi-engine instructor, CFII, as well as the helicopter. And so my real niche in this business is I fly everything I sell, for the most part. And I develop relationships with my customers. A lot of my customers are new to aviation, so they need training, mentor flying, a variety of things. And I have several contractors that work for me to help me provide those services to my customers.
That's very great, and thank you for doing that, and especially to inspiring others that may want to make a career out of aviation, or people who want to be interested in it. And I thank you for that too.
Yeah, it's great. We have a program you might be familiar with it, Young
Yep.
Eagles, through EAA. And this year at the Gathering, which is in Oshkosh, we donated a aerobatic helicopter ride in our BO-105 to raise funds for Young Eagles, and I think it sold for $22,000 or $25,000
Oh, wow.
to
That's
raise
amazing.
money for Young Eagles. In this helicopter behind me, last December 6th, we have our local Young Eagles event, and we flew 23 young men and women that have, some of which were never ever exposed to aviation in their life. So for your listeners that don't have the opportunity, if they get on EA website, look up Young Eagles. The programs are all over the country, and it's a great way to get exposed to aviation at no cost.
Yep, that's amazing, and I've heard of it before. And is Sean D. Tucker still the chairman?
No, he just handed that off this year, but Sean's a good friend and was a mentor to me in for many years in the air show world. Yeah, he's a wonderful ambassador of Young Eagles for sure.
Yeah, he sure is. And I've met him many times, and believe it or not, I was actually very nervous the first time I met him. I was kind of in my mom's shoulder the first time, but then over the years, I got to have more confidence and living with passion to meet him and
Yeah,
talk to him. So, Sean, thank you for that, and hope to see you at a air show one day.
yeah, for sure.
So, do you perform with the Red Bull skydivers too?
I do not.
Oh,
I
oh,
I do not have any other than the Red Bull, folks, Felix Baumgartner and Aaron Fitzgerald and Mirko in Austria are all very good friends of mine, and I do their check rides for ICAS. So for those of you that aren't familiar, there is really, some people refer to it as an aerobatic license, but we don't really possess a license. What we possess is a statement of aerobatic competency to perform in an air show. So anybody can go do aerobatics above 1,500 feet, as long as they're not within 4 miles of a Victor airway, and no big deal. In the helicopter, it's a little bit different because all helicopters have a restriction in the flight manual that says aerobatics are not approved for obvious reasons, because some of them, it probably wouldn't end well if you did that in them. So we have our helicopter, Red Bull and myself, in experimental category. And the reason why we did that is because we're not exceeding any of the limits of the machine, G-force or structural limits. We're actually just violating that restriction in the manual. So by putting it in experimental, we waive that. If you have an aerobatic box for training, you can go up by yourself and do aerobatics at any altitude you want. But when you have an air show, an organized event that has an air boss, you have to have what's called waivered airspace. And to perform in waivered airspace, you have to possess a statement of aerobatic competency. So every performer you see performing aerobatics, not just flybys, but aerobatic maneuvers, has to have a statement of aerobatic competency issued by the FAA, and it is evaluated by the International Council of Air Shows. So the International Council of Air Shows is this body. Sean Tucker, there's several aerobatic competency evaluators, and you're an evaluator for the type of aircraft you fly: jets, warbirds, helicopters. So you have to go perform, and the initial altitude you get is 800 feet, and you have to do so many performances, and then you can go to 500 and 250, and then surface level waivers. But every performer you see has to renew their statement of aerobatic competency every 12 months. And the purpose in that is to keep everybody safe. You can't really make any mistakes at 500 feet for the most part.
and very interesting too. And so is that called an ACE? Have
Yes.
you ever heard of that term,
Yeah.
ACE?
Aerobatic Competency Evaluator. It's the acronym for ACE.
Oh,
So
air.
I'm an ACE. Sean's an ACE. And so if you were a new pilot and you've never had a statement of aerobatic competency, you would apply to ICAS and you would find an ACE to mentor you and be your mentor and trainer. And then you would have a secondary ACE that would do the evaluation. The purpose in that is that they don't want a buddy system where, you're a friend of mine, I give you a statement of aerobatic competency. The purpose in it is to make sure that you're trained properly, because, I see it all the time. I see people go out and randomly do a roll or something on takeoff and crash their airplane. That isn't how the process works. You start at altitude and you have a buildup program that you do. There's not probably a performer out there that hasn't practiced what you see in the air show hundreds or thousands of times. And we have a lot of margin in our performances. We don't go out and go, oh, well, let's try this and see how it works out. I mean, if you make a mistake, you're dead.
Yeah.
That is a
That's something.
very true
You know,
statement. Very unforgiving.
it's
Very
very
agree.
unforgiving. And the helicopter aerobatics are unique from the standpoint that it's so expensive to run the helicopter. Uh, you know, uh, I know in my case last year, I flew the helicopter for air shows around the country like 60 hours total with my displays and everything. And my average cost per hour was $3,700.
Oh, wow.
So it's much more expensive than an airplane. And the reason why is they no longer manufacture the BO 105. The parts are hard to get. In Red Bull's case, they have two, and in America and two in Europe. And that's how you always see them flying at air shows because they have a backup, basically one to practice in, one to do air shows in, or they can use the backup one as an air show performer as well. In my case, I just have spare parts, but you didn't see me at Oshkosh this year because I had a fuel leak and I couldn't get the fuel tank fixed in time. And I'm actually that's what we were doing today in the BL 105, getting ready to start getting it ready and start practicing. So I'll practice every day up to the Pacific Air Show.
Oh, okay. I'm excited too. Are you going to be doing performer signings? Because that's a new thing at the show.
I just saw that. I just got my email on that today, so I assume so.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, welcome to the show. It's a really, really great performance.
I
Everybody there is really great. I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait either. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm actually very close to Huntington Beach, about
Oh,
47 minutes from here.
oh, nice,
So
perfect.
what were you gonna say?
Whereabouts do you live? What part
Yorba
of?
Linda,
Oh
California.
yeah, Yorba Linda. I'm familiar.
Oh, okay, cool.
Great.
So I saw last year, I was chilling in my room. I don't know what I was doing. I heard kind of like a jet noise, and I look up, it's the F-35 and the P-51 for the Heritage Flight. I'm like, oh, no way, I missed that. Dang
Yeah,
it. Yeah, because,
that's awesome.
yeah, and so, yeah. So, do you remember your first air show? If so, what was it like?
It it was great. It was less eventful than you think because you go out and practice. I had my mentor, the guy that taught me to do helicopter aerobatics, is a gentleman by the name of Rich Lee. Rich, when you see an Apache doing an air show, for the most part, it was probably him. He was Hughes Helicopters, Boeing, McDonnell Douglas experimental test pilot, and he was doing aerobatics and helicopters before Red Bull was an invented drink. Uh, he and Reiner Wilke, the gentleman that taught the Red Bull pilots, were performing in the 70s and 80s in helicopters. And so, I had flown with him a lot in the Hughes 500. So my first aerobatics and my first statement of aerobatic competency was in a Hughes 500. So I still have that as well as the BO 105. And, you practice so much, you develop a routine, and, you kind of zone all that out, and it was great. It was awesome. And, uh, it's certainly something to strive for, and it really helps you develop some good discipline.
Yeah, that's great advice, and thank you to Rich for doing all that and inspiring you. So,
Yeah, he's a
so
great guy.
is your routine different from the Rebel Air Forces? And if so, like how different and what
Uh,
are similarities?
there's only a handful of maneuvers you can really do in the helicopter. Uh, the you can do the loops and the rolls and the half Cuban eights and split S's and back flips. And the only maneuver that I'm not doing that Aaron's doing is a bow turn, which is the quick stop to a hover and the forward flip and the split S out of it. Um, I just, my aircraft's been down so much, I do them, but I haven't done them enough that I'm comfortable doing them at the air shows.
Oh, okay, gotcha. That's a really
So
fun maneuver
it's
too.
it's fun and it's challenging. I mean, you have some limits. You as you go inverted, you have to be in the climb, and you can develop some high rate of descent, and you need to be really careful with it for sure. But yeah, it's one thing to go do a roll and a loop and a split S and a backflip, but when you start linking the maneuvers, that's when they can become dangerous because you have to link maneuvers in a way that your energy state is high so that you can go into the next maneuver. So you'll see maneuvers that are always prior to one maneuver pretty regularly, even in fixed wing aircraft as well. So yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, sure is, and safety is always number one too. So,
Yeah, right. I mean,
s-
And you find, what I find is that Rich came to one of my shows and he said, "So what do you think that the crowd likes most?" And I said, "Oh, probably the backflip or the bow turn or something like that." He says, "Yeah, the loop, because helicopters aren't supposed to do that."
Oh
You know,
yeah.
and you have to remember that the majority of the people in the crowd are not aviators for the most part. They're they might have a passion for aviation, but nobody understands the physics and what is really hard and what is really easy. And helicopters, you roll the helicopter and loop it, and everybody thinks you're crazy.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people be like, it's not supposed to do that. It's
Yeah,
not.
exactly.
I'm like, these guys are probably the most professional ever, and they're very cool.
I
So,
had a great experience. I had a friend that's a test pilot for the FAA, and he was in town with his boss, who was a gal, and they were at MD Helicopters, and they called and said, "Hey, my boss wants to go for an aerobatic ride. Would you take her?" And I'm like, "Sure." So she came over, and Rich taught me to do loops, and I can do a loop and maintain 2 Gs, where in an airplane you can't do that. You're 3 or 4 Gs out the back of the loop. So by using the collective and cyclic combination, you can keep the aircraft in very low G maneuvering. And if you were to fly with me, it would be very benign compared to doing aerobatics in a helicopter, although it looks kind of crazy. And I looped it with her, and she looked over at me and she said, "I want your job. That's the coolest thing I've ever done."
wow.
And and she's done a lot, so that's pretty much the reaction that I get. And I think the air shows are fun, but you only get 6 minutes out there. And the thing I enjoy most is taking professionals up and showing them what I do, and most of them are really intrigued with the fact of how mild it really is.
Yeah, and sure is, and I love well, I love that too, and that's really great to see helicopters be doing that. So,
Yeah,
is there a favorite helicopter you have?
the one right behind me.
Awesome, the A-Star.
Yeah, yeah. I've been flying A stars for, say, I had 90 hours when I got my first checkout in an A star, so that's been 37 years ago. And I have probably 6,000 hours in A stars, and I do some film work, and I do some done utility work, and a variety. My wife and I just took this helicopter from Phoenix to Alaska uh, in June, and we spent a month in Alaska, seeing some of our customers, and taking one of our customers with us to show them Alaska, meet up with some friends. And we had this. This is the same helicopter, the same model that landed on Mount Everest. So
Oh, wow.
the limitations are pretty low. I mean, there's nothing that are pretty high. We really can't. There's nowhere we can't go. We were flying around Mount Denali, 12, 13,000 feet. The performance is great. I've landed it well over that altitude before. So they're a great machine. I love the BO 105, but it doesn't have air conditioning. It's very expensive to fly. It's not overly comfortable, but it's a wonderful machine. But yeah, this would be probably my favorite all around helicopter.
That's awesome, and that's a great
Yeah,
choice.
I fly the Cobra. A friend of mine has a museum in Texas, and I fly the Cobra and the Huey as well. And I fly a Huey out of Scottsdale for Dillon Precision as well. And I love the Huey. The Huey's a pretty iconic machine, and they're really quite easy to fly. They're great machines. All the helicopters, even the Robinson R44. I learned in a 22. I taught my son in an R44. I've taught a lot of customers. In fact, I just taught Kirby Chambliss to fly last year,
Oh, wow.
helicopters. He's my neighbor, and
Oh, seriously?
yes, and I said, when you move to the air park, I'll show you how to fly. So he moved over here, and I started to teach him in a friend of mine's R44. Before he got his license, he bought one, and he literally flies it almost every day.
Oh,
So
oh, wow.
here's a guy that flies inverted a foot off the ground in an airplane, and you would think that he never knew how to fly because he is so excited about it. And his wife just learned to fly as well. So that's my experience. You probably don't know Daryl Greenemeyer or have heard of him, but Daryl was an SR-71 test pilot. He held the world propeller-driven speed record. He still holds the low-altitude jet speed record in an F-104 at like 1.5 Mach. He was a good friend of mine. I took him up in an A-Star and taught him to hover. And his first reaction when I was teaching him, he says, if I flew an airplane that flew this poorly, I would eject. Because the helicopter has just no inherent stability, But I find that, I tell people if magic carpets were real, this is as close as you're going to get is a helicopter. I mean, Aaron and Mirko and Felix and I are very blessed to have had great teachers and mentors. And the reason why you don't see people doing what we do is just because it's so expensive, and you have to find somebody to show you, and you just can't go out and experiment with the helicopter like you can with the airplane, because the airplane, you can go out of the flight envelope and get back into it. In the helicopter, if you go out far enough, you never get back. So that's why you don't see people doing what we do. But even when I fly an R-44 or R-66 or R-22, they're just great machines, and there's nothing like that feeling of flying a magic carpet.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. And speaking of teaching people right now, I'm actually taking flying lessons
Oh,
currently.
where at?
Chino Airport.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I used to go to Chino a lot. Sanders Aircraft used to be there. Dennis Sanders, he's a air
Oh
racer.
yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, Dennis and Brian are good friends of mine, and yeah, they're great folks. And yeah, Chino was a great place. I used to love to go there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, oh, sorry about that.
Okay.
And the air show there, the Planes of Fame air show,
Sure.
it hasn't happened since 2019 because of all the construction going on.
Yeah.
And I'm bummed because that's kind of my home show. So
Yeah, that's too bad. I know Steve Hinton, and he was telling me that when we were at an air show last year, that it's becoming more and more, and we're seeing it everywhere. It's harder and harder to do an air show just because of the setback requirements. And one thing unusual about the helicopter is a fixed wing propeller driven airplane under 250 only has to have a 500-foot setback to the crowd line. Okay, the helicopters have to have 1,000, which is what the jets have to have. And the reason for that is the scatter distances. They're worried about rotor blade scatter distances, although I don't think their data is accurate. But anyway, you have 1,000-foot setbacks. You have to have it on the crowd side, and you have to have it on the non-crowd side. So now you need 2,000 feet in depth, and then you need 4,000 feet typically in length for that. So, but yeah, it's cool. I did one of the coolest air shows I did was last year at Ross Perot's private ranch in Dallas, Texas, which is right under the Bravo airspace in the middle of like a freeway and a Charles Schwab building. And I had a 3,000-foot box there, which was really, really awesome to be able to do a private air show right in the middle of Dallas. But they were able to get all the setback requirements and work hard with the FAA to get that approved.
that's great. I really, really think that's great,
Yeah.
man. That's awesome. Who announced that? Did you know?
Who announced that? I think maybe Rob Rayner announced that. Did he? I forget who did. I know who the air boss was. Cookie Crumb.
Oh, okay.
Cookie lives here in
Oh,
Phoenix.
really?
Mhm.
Awesome.
So he does a
Yeah,
lot of our shows.
yeah, that's great. Is it? That's great. Sorry.
No problem.
And are you gonna do Davis Monthan in 2025?
Probably. I got to look at my schedule. Kind of with my business, it's really hard for me to kind of predict what I have going. So I'm trying to keep all my shows on the West Coast, if possible.
Okay.
But that's my plan.
Yeah, that's great. I would love to go to that because the A10 is gonna be there for the last time before retirement.
I heard that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great
that's
show.
okay. Cool.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll see you there.
Yeah, hopefully, because I would love to. Either because the California Capital Air Show's that weekend, which I don't know, it's more closer to where I'm at,
Right.
and just the time and money too. So
Yeah. Go over there.
yeah.
Understood.
So is there an air show like you really want to perform at, like that you've never been?
Well, I guess I've hit my bucket list items. I wanted to do Oshkosh, which I don't know if you know, but you don't you get invited to Oshkosh, and it goes before a peer review. So I know people that have been flying air shows for decades that have never flown at Oshkosh. So I flew, my first one was last year, which was really an honor to go do that. And that's a big air show. That was probably the most nervous I was ever flying an air show when I took off and I saw how many people were there. It is a little, it is a little, you know, it puts a little pressure on you that you don't really realize until you're actually up in the air. And then I did a private air show for Airbus helicopters, which had to get approved by Airbus Europe and France. We have a manufacturing facility in Columbus, Mississippi. And so Airbus has been building the A-Star helicopter and the 145 Lakota since for 20 years there. And it was the 20th anniversary last August. And so they shut the airport down, got approval, put an aerobatic box in for me, and I did 2 private air shows at the Mississippi factory, which was really cool. I was super bummed. I was supposed to do the air show last weekend in Canada. Nobody's ever done a helicopter aerobatic display in Canada, so I had this fuel problem that we just got fixed, and unfortunately we didn't get to fly the Canadian air show. So that would be one I'd like to fly for sure.
Oh
And
man.
Miramar would be
Oh,
fun, but
oh yes. Miramar's amazing.
yeah.
And speaking of Miramar, actually, last year I was interviewed by ABC 10 News.
Oh wow,
Yep.
very cool.
Yeah, that
Very
made
cool.
my heart
Yeah, neat.
soar to the sky.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good for you.
like you'll like
Yeah,
Miramar.
it's hard because they only want one helicopter at an air show. I'd like to fly Luke Air Force Base, but they had Red Bull, and then their helicopter broke, and they didn't get to fly it, and it was too last minute, for me. So the air show business is a tough business, if you're not sponsored. I'm self-sponsored. I'm promoting my own company. And it was something I've always wanted to do. I don't know how much longer I'll do it. One of the challenges we're having, some of the parts for the BO-105 are no longer manufactured and are no longer overhaulable. So the main rotor gearbox and our hydraulic systems are not overhaulable. So I have spares of those, but when those run out, yeah, we'll all be kind of out of business, unfortunately.
Man.
But it is what it is, right?
Yeah,
So
I agree. And
yeah,
hopefully that doesn't happen to you,
yeah,
'cause that would not be fun.
yeah. So oh well.
Yeah, and do you have any family members that serve in the military?
You know, no, I do not. My father was in the army, and I don't have any family members that serve in the military. Although I built a lot of parts for the M134 minigun, and I have a lot of great friends, and I fly with some of the task force pilots who are fantastic folks. I certainly have a place in my heart for our veterans and those that have given their life for our country. And I own a North American AT6 as
Oh,
well.
awesome.
And then like I mentioned to you, I fly the P-51 quite a bit. I fly the P-40, the Wildcat, several of the Warbirds. And I took my private pilot check ride in a T-34 at the airport I live at. I love flying the Warbirds, as they just have so much history.
Yeah, yeah, same here. And I love the T6. That's my
Yeah, it's a
favorite.
great airplane. It'll keep you on your toes for
Oh,
sure.
okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's a little, it can be a little more challenging landing than the Mustang for sure, because the gear are a little narrower, and you have to. It keeps a high level of respect up for those airplanes, and I was taught both the T6 and the P-51 at Stallion 51. I went through both of their schools to learn to fly those airplanes and graduated, and then I go back every year and I do recurrent in the Mustang and the T6, and I'm actually working on a big flight test program. Our BO-105, we have a full data acquisition system in it. So we have cameras that are time synced to the flight controls. So when I go up and do maneuvers, I can look at that data. I put that all in the P-51 in Crazy Horse, and Lee and I have been flying it the last 2 years. We're doing a program. I have experimental flight test background, and so we're members of the Society of Experimental Test Pilots, and we're working on a white paper. It's data acquisition meets 80-year-old fighter. And we've put an air data boom on it. We've tufted the wings, and we've been able now to quantitatively document certain aerodynamic things about the P-51 that are misunderstood by some people. And two of my neighbors have been killed in them. One of our
Oh,
neighbors did a go around and ended up in the hangar that I rented.
oh,
And
I'm
then
so
my other
sorry.
friend, Jeff Pino, was killed in Big Beautiful Dolls several years ago, giving a ride to some. They're great machines, but you know, most of our new pilots are learning in tricycle gear airplane, and we don't do a great job, and I include myself in this as instructors, of transferring that tribal knowledge about flying, tailwheel airplanes, number one, and then working into these big heavy fighters. I mean, uh, they were designed for one purpose, to go to war. Nobody ever thought they would be in civilian hands as toys, right? And most of the people I know that have been killed in them uh, really didn't respect them or understand the airplanes. And so we're doing a whole flight test program to kind of uh, explain that with physics and video because a picture's worth 1,000 words. And we've even learned some things that we didn't know as well, which will be really interesting. So I'll share some of that with you when I have something that I can publish.
Okay, got that. Thank you very much. And that's great advice too. Always know the aircraft you're flying, know the stall speed, and
Yeah,
just
get
be on
good
your
training.
toes.
Yeah, get good training. I see it all the time. I see, I do a lot of expert witness accident work for helicopter crashes, and you can almost read the accident report before the accident happens. And what I see happening is people become complacent and they lose respect for the machine. And I fly. I have several corporate jet type ratings. I do recurrent training in this aircraft, even though I am a trainer in it. I have approval to do training for insurance companies, but every year I get a third party to come out, a friend of mine that has a school, and he gives me my recurrent training in this. And I can tell you this: I have never gone to recurrent training and didn't learn something, no matter how much experience I have. Whether it's the citation or whether it's the A star or you name the airplane, there's something to learn. And I mean, if you talk to Sean, he'll tell you the same thing. The second you quit learning, you're in trouble.
Yep, definitely 1000%. And so do you know the Fighter Pilot podcast?
I do not.
Vincent Jello Aiello.
No, I'm not familiar.
He said while reacting to a Top Gun trailer that after every flight, no matter how much flights you were on and how much flights he was on, there's always something you're going to learn. You're always learning something.
Yep, I would agree. And people don't put enough value in the debrief. You know, because you know when you have a good instructor, they can log all the things you're doing because they're comfortable in the airplane and you don't remember because you have tunnel vision, right? As your stress level goes up, you develop this tunnel vision. And I think it's very important for all of us to realize that we're all susceptible to that, and I've had several emergencies in a variety of helicopters. I've had several engine failures and had to do full down auto rotations, but I will tell you, you will react exactly how you were trained and no other way. And if you weren't trained, then that's what you'll do. You won't react, and it's probably not going to end well. I see it all the time. I do a lot of recurrent training. I roll the throttle off, and usually the first auto rotation isn't very pretty. So you do need that practice, and that's why I do it. It really keeps me current. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy sitting over there and demonstrating auto rotations and watching people make mistakes, and I gain an incredible amount of knowledge from that as well.
Yeah, that's great, sir, and thank you for that too. And so, what is the best aviation advice you've ever received?
Um, you know, the best advice I think I received was um, from Sean Tucker. He told me one day, uh, I was wanting to get into the air show business, and and I was hanging around somebody who probably wasn't good for me. And he said, "Here, let me give you some advice. Stay as far away from that person as possible and as close to Richly as you can." So a mentor, right? And I think the best advice I can give young people today is, there's people like myself. I have several folks that I mentor consistently which are most of them are my customers, and they have a 24/7 phone to me call. They can call me anytime. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? If you're concerned about a flight, or you're concerned about a maneuver, or you're training, or you're flying a cross country flight, reach out to that mentor, your instructor, whoever that is. Don't be afraid to ask and have somebody give you a second opinion. Most of these accidents that you see in aviation, I read them, and I'll do expert witness work, and I'm like, why did they even take off? In most cases.
Yep.
So find a mentor, find someone that is willing to mentor you, and listen to them. They're out there, and there's so many great, YouTube has been such a great asset. I mean, there's a lot of junk on there. There's a lot of things I don't agree
Yep.
with, but for the most part, there is a lot of really good information on there. And, I don't know if you've seen, Hoover Pilot Debrief. Does accident.
Oh, yes, 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 I
He's
have.
he's an ex-military guy. I don't know him, but I watch his program, and I read every accident report. And when I see people doing things that I don't think they should be doing, I reach out to them. And like, what guy not wearing his shoulder harnesses, or just silly stuff. You know what I mean? Because I had an incident happen many years ago where there was a guy that was questionable in our industry, and I didn't reach out to him, and he had a midair with another helicopter, and I always wonder if I would have said something, would that have made the difference?
Yep.
As young aviators, you guys have resource at your fingertips because you're technologically savvy. And if you put a camera in your aircraft when you're training and you have audio, the information you can glean from that debrief is really quite unbelievable. I should have sent you a video that you could have played, but I have a cockpit video with my data logging system in it, and it's a loop basically, and you can see the cyclic position, the collective position, the airspeed, the entry altitude, the entry heading, and I would go up and I send these to my mentor Rich when he's not able to fly with me, and I'm like, hey, I doinked up this maneuver. What am I doing wrong? And you slow it down and you play it back, and it's fantastic. And the new simulators are fantastic. There's a new simulator for the A-Star at Santa Monica Airport, and it's called Loft Simulation, and you wear VR goggles. It's FAA approved. It's EASA approved in Europe. I just did a speaking engagement in Switzerland, at the manufacturer, and I can do full down auto rotations. I can do sling loading in this simulator, and they can even teach people how to sling load in it before they ever get in the helicopter. And there's no risk, and everything is videoed and recorded. So the simulation is becoming better and better. Typically, the helicopter simulation is not very good close to the ground, but this loft simulator is really quite impressive. You should look it up.
Oh, okay. Definitely, will do. I'll make that an item for the bucket list.
Good.
And then, I know we kind of talked on the mentor thing, but what other advice could you give to future aviators like myself who may want to pursue a career in aviation?
Um, I think it's really important that before you start getting instruction, that you reach out to aviators in your area that are experienced, and find a really good school. And you need to have a school that has structure, or an instructor. Not that you can't find a single instructor that isn't with the school, but you need to find a school that has structure and is teaching good stick and rudder skills. One of the things that I see a lot of is, we get an instructor, you become an instructor. That's probably what you'll end up doing. And so you can build time. Well, when you get your CFI, you may have several hundred hours. You need to fly with seasoned, experienced instructors that have actually worked in the aviation industry. That's really important. Not to bag on young CFIs, because you have to get your experience somewhere. But I see when I get a lot of students that just learn, and they've learned from a school, and the instructors never really worked a helicopter, their depth of knowledge is pretty shallow. And really reach out to a good school. And then once you get your rating, find an instructor that has really good experience. And there's some just fantastic ground schools out there, video ground schools. And usually what I find to be the hardest thing is most people don't spend enough time really understanding the aerodynamics and the ground. That's where people are really short. Everybody wants to go fly,
Yep.
right? So you really have to get your head in the ground school and really understand these machines, because if something goes wrong, it can make the difference between living and dying, right?
Yeah,
So
100%. And thank you for that advice, sir. And next, is there where can viewers go to learn more about your performances and your other aviation
uh,
adventures?
you're on my Scott Urschel Instagram site, but I have a Instagram, Pylon Aviation, Pylon Aviation, on Instagram and Facebook. You can follow us on there, and we try and keep that up to date when we know what our air show schedule is and what we're doing. And we post a lot of cool stuff we do with helicopters and airplanes and warbirds as well.
Awesome. And everybody go give that a follow and make sure to give Scott a follow too, guys.
Appreciate it.
And then somebody else wanted to join. He's kind of like my co-host now, because if that's okay with you.
Sure.
His name's Cullen Weaver. He's a spotter who lives out in Buffalo, New York. And we're kind of co-hosting together
Nice.
a little bit. Well, training wise.
Got it.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. How's it going?
Good.
Good. How you been, Braden?
I've been good.
Good. So back to what we were saying earlier. I heard you couldn't make the Toronto show. Is that right?
Yes. I actually couldn't make Oshkosh, and I was supposed to go to Toronto from Oshkosh, and we had a fuel cell problem. We had to pull the fuel cells out of the 105 and send them back, and we put them in. And we still had a leak, and it's been a bit of a challenge to get it back in the air. Hopefully, I can get back in the air tomorrow and start practicing.
Yeah, my local EMS service used to fly 105s, and the head of the maintenance, he always told me that they were not that fun to fly because they always kept breaking.
Yeah, that's pretty much the case. I just had this conversation with Aaron Fitzgerald yesterday. They have a transmission problem, and that's why I have spare parts. And I'm kind of looking at the longevity of this machine, and like I was mentioning earlier, the cost to operate it last year was $3,700 an hour. I don't even want to know what it is this year. Yeah.
Wow,
So
that's crazy.
last year we had to send the blades in to get refinished, and that was $40,000. We had about 120,000 in maintenance last year, and we flew 50 some hours. And then insurance is becoming a big problem. So insurance in helicopters in general is expensive. And then when you tell the underwriter, hey, I want to go do low level aerobatics, it narrows the field down to people that want to take on that risk. So there's only 2 underwriters right now that will insure what I do. So unfortunately, I think between insurance and maintenance, that's going to be kind of what will end up becoming the end of my program anyway.
Oh man.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it is what it is without a sponsor. If I had Red Bull as a sponsor, it'd be a different deal. But for my little program here, trying to make enough money to keep it in the air, it's been fun. It's been a great learning experience. I've met a lot of great people like yourselves, and it's a great way to promote aviation. But at some point you have to do what you have to do. So
Yeah, 100% agree.
Mm-hmm. So is that your 105, or not your 105, your A-Star there in the background?
yes, sir.
Oh, nice. How much do those things go for, like base?
Base price, I just sold one the other day, is $3,865,000.
Wow.
Brand new?
Wow.
Yeah. And when my typical completed one for a VIP, with the Garmin, and we put cameras on the tail that look at the skids, and a camera at the skids that looks at the tail rotor. You can display it on the Garmin 500 TXI. We put the new Garmin GFC 600 autopilot in it, which is a full 3-axis autopilot. By the time we get all that done, you're just under 4.5.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they've gotten expensive.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
But
That's
I flew this one just about 100 hours in the last 40 days. I went to Alaska and back, and then we went up in the mountains of Arizona and flew around, went fishing, and I put 2 quarts of oil in it, and that's all I've done to it.
okay.
So it's
Interesting.
quite reliable.
yeah.
So
Okay.
and it has air
And
conditioning.
anybody else have any questions?
Yeah.
Then
So our local sheriff's department for like, where I am, I'm pretty much on the opposite side of you guys. I live in Buffalo,
Sure.
New York. It's up by Niagara.
Yep.
And our local EMS, not EMS service, excuse me, our sheriff's operators, the Erie County Sheriffs, they own I believe it's a 2001 AS350B2,
Huh?
and they kept trying to replace it and whatnot, but now they don't want to replace it, and they tried to get a new A-Star, but they just decided not to, because the head sheriff, John Garcia, he's very needy when it comes to like whatnot, and he wanted to spend $8 million on a new helicopter, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't end up getting a new A-Star, even though they wanted to.
Yep.
So now they ended up buying a new H-135 right off the market.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's expensive.
yeah, because he
Yeah. So
wanted.
an average police completion, I do a lot of return to service flights and test flying for Hangar One uh, Avionics in California, and they do most of the West Coast helicopter conversions for police. And the helicopter's about 4 million, and the completion's about 4 million with the FLIR and the hoist and NVG and everything. It gets very expensive.
oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's quite something. That's
Yeah.
all I got to say.
Yep.
Yep.
And
So he wanted to spend 8 million exactly. No, nothing less, nothing more. He wanted to spend 8 million on a new
Wow.
helicopter.
Yeah, that's
And
expensive.
they even thought about they even thought about getting a Blackhawk.
Oh yeah, that's not a good
Uh,
idea.
that's
yeah.
exactly what I said. I'm like, dude, are you nuts? Like, you can't get a Blackhawk.
Well, the problem with the Blackhawks, they're not standard category.
Exactly.
They have to be an experimental or restricted. And when we're going to air shows, we can fly over congested areas to go to and from the air show, but you just can't fly an experimental helicopter everywhere you want. We have to do a program letter. We have to notify the FAA of where we're going. I mean, yeah, that's probably not a great program, but the Blackhawk's a great helicopter. But the A-Star is really the machine. This actually used to be a Phoenix police helicopter.
Oh,
This
You're
oh
particular one.
kidding.
really?
Yeah, that's why it has the big window in the side, and it's NVG, and we have some cool stuff. I have floats for it, and when I go offshore or something, I'll put the floats on it. But it's a great machine.
Awesome.
Super
And,
rad.
and then his name is Ryan. He says my city police has one Airbus H145, one Airbus H125, and three McDonnell Douglas F530F aircraft.
Yep, I fly all those. I just delivered a 145. That's an awesome machine. We built 100. We sold 180 last year of the
Wow.
145s, and they're at 11 million. And I flew the 530F. I did aerobatics in the 530F. It's a great machine.
Oh, that's
Wait,
awesome.
the 500s can do aerobatics?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah,
I never knew they could do
I,
aerobatics.
yeah. I have a statement of aerobatic competency in all models 500 and the BO 105. I think I'm the only one with one right now.
Hmm.
And
Maybe.
the gentleman that taught me, he did air shows in the Hughes 300, the Hughes 500, the MD 900, and the 530 and the Apache. All those are fully aerobatic.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
So I got
Maybe
an interest.
something
I
that we
get
can.
this question asked all the time. Uh, who was the first person to do a loop in a helicopter, right? And I'm actually going to give his son a ride. His name was Tommy Thompson, and if you Google on YouTube, uh, first helicopter loop Tommy Thompson, you can see it. It was an S92 or an S52 Franklin piston powered 3-bladed rotor Sikorsky in 1949, and there's a video of him doing the first loop in a helicopter, and he was one of the first 100 helicopter pilots.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
gonna look that up right now.
Yeah.
Very awesome.
Thompson.
So although what we do is super unique, and Aaron and I are the only ones doing it in the United States right now, there's been literally hundreds that I know of experimental test pilots that have done aerobatics. Sikorsky did them in the. I have a friend that was a Sikorsky test pilot. He's done aerobatics in the Black Hawk, and a lot of it is mainly developing high angle maneuvering for military operations. I mean, they don't typically do aerobatics, but they have to test to that. So it's not really, it's unusual to see it in the air show world. It's unusual to see it because it's so expensive to do it, and you have to have a helicopter to do it. But by no means were Aaron and I the first people to ever do it, or the only ones.
Oh, awesome.
Wow.
Very interesting to know
Yeah.
about that. That's great.
So yeah, maybe we can look forward to 500 aerobatics in the show season upcoming.
Well, you have to get somebody to buy me one, because you put them in experimental, and then it can be sometimes hard to get them back out once you do
Yeah.
that. The
Maybe I'll buy you
manufacturers put
one.
prohibition. Yeah, so if you want to buy one, I'll go do it. No problem.
Bet. Alrighty, I'll look for some used ones right now.
Okay.
Question from Ryan. He wants to know where are you based
I-
out of?
I'm based out of Stellar Air Park in Chandler, Arizona. I'm about 20 minutes driving from Sky Harbor Airport. We have a 4,000-foot paved runway, and this is my house, actually. You're in my house hangar.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Come out in the morning with a cup of coffee and roll the hell out. Usually I have the 105 in here, and I roll it out and go practice.
Wow, that's great, dude. You're pretty lucky for that.
Yeah, it is a really cool thing to live at an air park. And I get up in the morning and Kirby's out there in his helicopter, and we'll go fly to breakfast, and it's a pretty cool thing. I never thought I'd be flying helicopters, much less flying them upside down and getting to do the cool things I get to do.
Wait, so you're next to Kirby Chambliss's private air park?
No, he doesn't live there anymore. I see
got
somebody
rid of
asking about air races in the MD 500s.
Yeah.
So in 1995, McDonnell Douglas was promoting the Notar helicopter, and it wasn't very successful. It was a little underpowered. So Rich Lee, the gentleman that taught me to do aerobatics, he did air shows in the Notar, and he said, "Hey, we're having the Phoenix 500 air races in Mesa, Arizona. Why don't we put together an air race and let's get some people?" So my friend Mike Dillon had a 500. I had a 500. My friend from Hawaii had a 500, Tom Hopman. And I let my friend Neil Jones, who owns Quantum Helicopters, fly mine. And then McDonnell Douglas gave me a Notar. And we did this big promotional thing, and we air raced helicopters. You can go on YouTube and look up helicopter air race. And we started all in a hover line abreast, and we raced helicopters.
I'm gonna look that up.
Oh, wow.
So do I just look up MD helicopter race?
No, look up helicopter air racing on YouTube.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Sorry, I have to put that on my to Google list.
Yeah, so my friend Mike Dillon and I always joked about who had the faster helicopter, and so Rich goes, "Hey, let's just have a race," and I thought he was joking, and next thing you know, I'm racing helicopters. So it's the only sanctioned air racing helicopter event ever to happen in the world. So that was my claim to fame, is I own the first pylon air racing letter of authorization ever issued.
Wow.
Okay, so if I'm correct, there's 3 500s and 1 520. Okay,
Yep.
I'm on the right one then.
Yep. We had a C model, a D model, an E model, and a 520. So we had every model of 500 flying at the time, except the F model, of course.
Yeah, I'm watching it right now.
Yeah, that's it.
That's
me
awesome, dude.
in the Notar. So when McDonnell Douglas wanted to win, and we had it in experimental, and the test pilot told me, "Yeah, just ignore the torque gauge and try and win. You need to make sure you win this race." So,
Oh, okay.
but I didn't win. My friend beat me. So,
Oh, dang.
Oh, there he is, 7, Scott Urschel.
Have you ever been to Kingman, Arizona? I was trying to
I sure have.
find out if they let you go look. Oh,
Yep, I have. I haven't been to the scrapyard, but I've been up there to. There's a vendor that I buy my ground handling wheels and some things from up in Kingman. But yeah, I fly up there.
That's great. Very interesting to know. So everybody doesn't have questions. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much, Scott, for coming on the podcast
You're
today,
welcome.
sir.
Well, hope to see you in
All right.
Huntington Beach soon.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'll be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you
Thanks
guys.
for being here on my last training.
Yeah,
Before
no.
I officially
Yeah, my pleasure.
Have
take it over.
He
a
is
good
our
one, guys.
Yeah, you too, Scott.
See ya.
Can't wait to
Bye-bye.
see you.
Alrighty.
All right,
Bye,
bye-bye.
Scott.